Does the Modi government have the numbers for one nation, one poll, the big electoral reform that the government wants to table in this session of parliament? And if it does not, why is the BJP investing so much political capital in this idea? I'm Barkha, Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be looking at the One Nation, One Poll proposal. Now, this is meant to be brought in as a constitutional amendment in this session of Parliament. So far, 32 parties have supported the proposal and 15 parties have opposed it. But if you look at how the numbers stack up, the Modi government doesn't actually have the numbers to get two-thirds support of those present and voting, not unless an estimated 100 members of parliament abstain. But stranger things have happened in politics and in the Lok Sabha. The question we're asking today is to try and understand the politics of this. By some accounts, even if One Nation, One Poll does get parliamentary approval, it will not be operational till 2034. Why is the Modi government investing this degree of political capital in a proposal that it probably does not have the numbers to pass? Let's introduce our guests on the program today as we try and decode what is being touted by the government as a major electoral reform. Joining us is Sanjay Hegde, who's of course a senior advocate and an analyst. Welcome, Sanjay, to the program. Also joining us is Dr. Manisha Priyam, academic and political analyst. Welcome, ma'am, to the program. Also joining us is Professor Ashwini Mahajan, who's of course a leader of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. Welcome back, and seeing you after a long time, Ashwini ji. So welcome back to the program. Sanjay Jha, Congress supporter, lapsed Congress spokesperson, is with us, and Rajat Sethi, political analyst, should be with us shortly. Let me actually start with you, Sanjay Jha. I'll have to be careful by saying Sanjay Jha and Sanjay Hegde because we have two Sanjays on the program. Is this a proposal that the opposition or the Congress or you personally support? Because, of course, the argument has been made that this is not new to Indian politics, that for many years after India's independence, this is something that the country followed. It would save election expenditure. It would save also the country being from permanent election mode. And what happens is, if the country is in permanent election mode, then there's less talk about policy, about accountability, about governance, and more campaign rhetoric all the time. What do you say?
Barkha, firstly, I hope it was me that you intended to start the program with, because it was a long, pregnant pause. So I'm assuming
I got confused for a moment about the two Sanjays, but do go ahead. Yes.
Okay, but anyway, I'll flatter myself on the assumption that it was me that you wanted to start the program with. Apologies, Mr. Hegde. But here is my answer to you in short. I think this is nothing but the usual Modi government attempt at kite flying to distract attention from more compelling issues that the country has to be really obsessed about, whether it is the Adani Gate, whether it's issues of very poor governance, Manipur, and obviously the economic woes that the country is saddled with. My answer to this is very straightforward. They don't have the numbers. That's one part of it. The second more critical part is that if you look at the entire conversation around One Nation, One Election, it basically destroys the very structure of cooperative federalism that is incorporated in our constitution. And, this whole story, the narrative that the BJP has spun, that, after independence, it continued for so many decades. Well, we know it continued for so many decades, but there is a reason why you had Article 356 in the Constitution. Governments would fall willy-nilly at some point. That was, I think, not possibly, nobody could forecast as to when it will happen, but this would happen as a natural corollary of a political evolution in a new democracy. So the fact that it worked for till 1967 or 68 doesn't mean that it has to be brought back again.
Yeah, but when you say that it goes against the spirit of cooperative federalism, are you saying that spirit was dead in the 1960s of India?
No, it's not. But here is the point. The point is that now you have a different political dynamic. Regional parties have emerged. Unlike what happened in the past, where Congress kept winning all state and national elections, this is now a very different situation. And we need to move with the times. Today, for example, you have regional parties who have a distinctive voice and who today, I believe, actually fulfill aspirations that national parties are not deemed to fulfill. Don't forget, in the much hyped Maharashtra election that Narendra Modi and the BJP take a lot of credit for, Eknath Shinde and Ajit Pawar are formidable forces. It tells you how Indian politics needs to be respected with the contemporary times. The Congress weakened, the BJP has emerged as a formidable force, but that does not mean that India, like the United States, is a two-party system. There are several national parties, and there are many, many national regional parties.
And
We
your argument before I open it up and go to Ashwini ji, your argument is that the reason that the BJP is spending so much time on it, even though it most likely, I'm using my words carefully, most likely doesn't have the numbers to get it passed as legislation, is because it's a happy distraction. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Jha?
Absolutely. And I'll give you one reason behind it. They keep talking about Barkha, that we will save cost. I can tell you the issue is not saving cost. If you look at the elections, and I saw some numbers people have estimated, the cost of doing the national election in 2024 was around 6,900 crores. The bigger challenge that the people need to answer is, where did the electoral bond money, which was all illegal money, unconstitutional money, where did that go? And the black money that is flourishing all over in our elections, which is like over 1 lakh crores. That is the issue that the government will not address. It will talk about, we need to save cost, while it will not tell the people of India that over a lakh of parallel black money is all over the place during an election. That is the main issue we should be talking about.
Okay, so you're saying instead of cleaning up political financing, it is easier to talk about one nation, one election. It's what you've called kite flying and a happy distraction. I want to welcome Rajat Sethi to the program. He's joined the panel. Hi, Rajat. Good to see you. Professor Ashwini Mahajan, I'll start with you. Sanjay Jha says it's a happy distraction. It's never going to clear parliament. It's against the spirit of federalism. What would you say?
We see Narendra Modi ji has been talking about one nation, one election for so long. It is not for today. At that point of time, no Adani issue was there, nothing of that sort was there, but he had been talking about it. So it takes time to create consensus, and this has now happened after a long, long time. We have to think about it, how this can happen. So this is for sure that after a spell of time, this has happened in the national politics. Initially, there was only one nation, one election. Now, due to the politics of the then ruling party, Article 356 had been used frequently, and that has actually led to this situation of different parties ruling different states at different times. And now we are in a situation where we are facing elections after every 5-6 months, and nation is always in the election mode. More than cost, what is important is that the policy continuity is not possible, and every time new election issues come, new freebies are announced, and those parties, those who are not interested in giving freebies, also have to fall in line with that, because after all, winning elections is also very important. Therefore, saying that this one nation, one election, one thing is very sure, that nobody can say that this is not good for the country. The only thing is, what they can say is, yes, numbers are not there. How it will happen, this and new issues like regional parties can also be told. But one thing's for sure, it is there that this one nation, one election is in the interest of the country. One thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Second, the cost is important. Like when you are always in election mode, huge amount of money is spent, and obviously in one way or the other, when money is spent in the elections by candidates of whichever party, they will always try to earn back uh, money, whatever they have spent in multiple times. Then the issue of numbers is there. Just Barkha ji, If you
Yes.
see, if you don't have numbers, and even then you are trying for a good thing, then you must be appreciated. And therefore, I think right political forces in the nation will come forward, and this
So you,
endeavor of Modi will
yeah.
be successful. This is what
So,
I feel.
so you think it's a good idea, and nobody can disagree on the idea. They may be able to disagree about the viability, but not about the philosophy. Sanjay, literally 1 second, because I want to go to Dr. Priyam Rajat and Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Jha. I can't hear Sanjay Jha. Can we unmute Sanjay Jha very quickly, please?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you'll have to give me more than 1 second because that took 3 seconds away. Barkha, very quickly. Okay. Here is the point. My response to Ashwini ji, I respect him a lot. But, Ashwini ji, the government of Mr. Modi, because the election commission basically reports to him, could not even hold elections of Maharashtra along with Haryana on time. Many state elections have been deferred because the explanation given by the election commission is it's a logistical nightmare and we need to move army and police, etc., etc. So I think we need to understand that one reality. And the second point, you said that permanent election mode. Please tell Mr. Modi to govern the country. He's the prime minister. He should not be sitting in Maharashtra doing 100 rallies. Leave it to Mr. Fadnavis.
Okay.
The Prime Minister is on campaign mode. It is not the opposition's problem.
Okay. Dr. Manisha Priyam, do you agree with Ashwani ji that in principle it's a good idea? It's more about the effectiveness of the numbers we're talking about, not actually about the idea itself.
No, I in principle believe in the idea of democracy. Thank you for referring to me as Dr. Priyam, because it's an honor to be known by the title that you've earned by intellect and by pursuit, more than by birth, and it's not anecdotal. Let me tell you one thing, that all these arguments, including my esteemed panelists who's preceded me, Ashwini ji, they tend to tell me that this is an economic idea of efficiency foisted onto democracy, which is primarily a political idea. Now, what does this economic idea of efficiency convey to me in terms of political memory? Now, I remember red color government buses with an imprint of paint, yellow paint on it, saying "Anushasan hi desh ko mahan banata hai." Now, you are free and happy to put the ear to it. If you can't remember, I will do it for you. It's the emergency that your party talks about with so much gusto in the parliament. I'm happy to provide you all anecdotal accounts of the emergency. And I can tell you, the one moment that I would not like my country to be foisted with is with anything close or near the emergency. Part of the reason why the political argument has been won over by the BJP is because all the parties and certain regions and geographies of India that were opposed to the Congress party during emergency now support the BJP. So if there are people like me who remember the argument and who remember the yellow on the red, they will warn you that keep away from.
Why does this proposal trigger that memory?
What does this thing talk to you about? It'll be more efficient to have an election. Now, whose money is it? It's the exchequer's money. The second point is that when you make comparisons about political timings, saying 1967 tak hota tha, abhi nahi hota hai. 1967 kya tha? Kamaraj Nadar plan tha. It means a plan which said basically all change. It was a moment that tried to foist on one supreme model at the center and mitigating the power of the states. Are we in that India? Can we retrofit that India to this one? That's left for you. The third and more important argument is, and I will conclude with this, is that this moment has politically changed dramatically in two important ways. One, there is a third tier of government that has a statutory and constitutional status. What do you want to do? Do you want to change all, or do you want to say that third tier is not really a legitimate one? No, there are three tiers. Do you want to change all? And if you want to change all, then it's not just the parliament, it has to go back to the state legislatures. And please remember that there is something in India's democracy right now, that the electorate is looking to election moment as a moment for redistribution. What people call as doles are welfare monies given by your governments, their governments, all governments. And this means, therefore, that household risk stabilization is the primary measure through which incumbents are coming back to governments. The economic message to your government and those other governments in the state says, please protect poor households. That's the most important economic agenda. That's why you're winning elections. So my economic message is from the bottoms up, and my economic message is to protect the political structure of India's democracy.
Okay, this last point is a very interesting point, and let me take that to Rajat Sethi, that elections are actually moments where voters look towards parties for economic redistribution. The idea of a centralized model being thrust on, as she sees it, on politics is an over-centralization of power. So whereas elections allow for the redistribution of resources, a one nation, one poll is the opposite of the redistribution of power. It is the centralization or the concentration of power. One, how do you respond to that philosophically? But two, as a student of politics, I am intrigued. If the government doesn't have the numbers, why has it invested this much political capital in this idea? Sanjay Jha says it's a deflection. It's a happy distraction. What do you say?
So I'll speak here as a citizen, as a conscientious citizen of this country. What I feel is that for a fairly long time, politicians necessarily pluck low-hanging fruits, something that suits their immediate interest. Nobody can go beyond, the selfish objectives of every 5 year of elections or 2 year election, etc., and go past and look at the bigger horizon, because the distractions are so acute in nature that you tend to be bogged down by the very immediate set of policy objectives, and look at where the competition is. Today, the entire country is looking backwards. We're debating either Constitution, Nehru, Indira Gandhi, and nothing beyond that. Whereas, look at what China is doing. Look at what America is doing. We have to compete with these two nations who have very different set of polity. China doesn't have democracy, so they necessarily have a head start over there in terms of at least getting their houses in order, ensuring that innovation gets the right amount of impetus from their rulers. And so does America. America also doesn't get into these distractive elections every year and multiple times in 1 year. They at least have that 2 year window where you can do certain things with that 2 year horizon. I don't understand, why do we, none of us here is in active politics that way, why do we jump in and start taking political positions on this? Can we not analyze it from like what Manisha ji analyzed? It's a fair point. What she said, that for a 5 year period, if you do not have intermediary elections, possibly the people will not have a platform to air their grievances related to economy. Now, that has been what is happening so far, is that we have been having election after election. Largely, the mandate has been with the BJP, be it state or the center. That clearly signals uniformity, though there are still rural distress and issues which we still believe, job-related issues, etc., etc. The problem here is that we haven't tried the counterfactual. We are trying to presume that the counterfactual is going to be such that people will not have any avenues in a thriving democracy other than elections to voice their grievances. I believe that is that's not a fait accompli sort of a scenario, that people will languish for these 5 years and only after 5 years they'll get a chance to breathe some some air and go out and cast their votes. Problem is, we need to give counterfactuals enough opportunity, time. We should cross our political lines and divides and ideological divides and come in and support a concept which prima facie doesn't have political connotations.
Well, the political connotation, very quickly before I go to Sanjay Hegde, one political connotation is that big parties do better than smaller parties in one nation, one
Where is the proof?
Sanjay Jha, you want to offer? Sanjay Jha, you want to offer proof?
You cannot give circumstantial evidence. You need to give irrefutable proof that way.
Yeah. Okay, Barkha, very quick answer to you.
Yeah.
Have you noticed why Narendra Modi campaigns in state elections? Because he goes ahead and nationalizes a state or a regional election. If you look at even Maharashtra, safe hai to ek hai, or ek hai to safe hai. What are these calls on? These are nothing to do with unemployment, inflation, a reservation for Marathas, right? So when you have one nation, one election, you will find national parties, both Congress and BJP. I'm not just saying BJP alone, but BJP primarily, playing to terrorism, national security, threat from insidious, invisible forces, talking about communal tensions. It becomes a nationalization of the state election. Point number two, very important. Look at the distribution of financial resources that Dr. Manisha Priyam talked about. It is absolutely lopsided. The BJP, even in electoral bonds, has nearly 60% of the money.
But there was a time when the Congress was the behemoth, the political behemoth. Now the BJP is.
Let's talk about with Congress was not talking about one nation, one election, right? What happens is in an election, Narendra Modi will have the media, the big media, the legacy media. He will have the institutions of ED, CBI, and income tax to terrorize opposition. He will have the muscle and the money power, and he will have the issues. It is going to be the most ridiculously lopsided election imaginable. And that is what they want.
Okay. Sanjay Jha, before I go to Sanjay Hegde, Rajat, you had a brief interjection.
There is a difference between conjectures and actual proof. When you're talking about certain things, certain assertions, you need to come out with evidences. Today, you can say that the BJP has all the agencies and still they were able to only get to 40 seats, which you were only calling it was a victory of Congress. Now, if it is a victory of Congress with all the power that Prime Minister Modi had, you cannot play both sides. That's the real problem here. If you ask these minds, they will not be able to come out with tangible evidences which throw light that people will, the BJP or the ruling party is going to dominate the elections in such a way, in that counterfactual.
Okay, Sanjay Hegde, let's bring you in wearing your legal hat. Sanjay Jha, just give Sanjay Hegde a chance to respond. Constitutional amendment needs 2/3 present and voting. The math seems to suggest that you need about 100 MPs to abstain for the government to be able to pass this legislation, and then you need, X number of state assemblies to ratify it, right? So it's a long haul. But yet, there is a kind of, we'll show you the numbers. We were running an online poll. Do most people support this? Most people seem to actually like the idea without necessarily understanding the many different layers that may emerge from it if it's ever implemented. What's your take?
Well, my take is this is primarily the death of parliamentary democracy. You see, one of the most important levers in a parliamentary democracy is the ability of the leader of the house, whether it's the prime minister or the chief minister, to recommend a dissolution of the house. If a house cannot be dissolved, and add to that, we have this mess of the 10th schedule, which has now got wholesale defections. We will have situations where, there will be no impetus to have a government which has a majority in the house. There can be a minority government continuing because the others don't vote it out. Or alternatively, you may have a situation where the minorities turn into majorities with wholesale defections. That's the first point. The second point is what Manisha referred to. It will be a demonetization of democracy. People all over India, various times, are used to getting various freebies. They at least, let's go on the current theory, they get a freebie for the Lok Sabha election, they get a freebie for the assembly election. Now you'll have to have only one set of freebies. And to quote Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, Zinda Qaum 5 saal tak intezar nahi karti. Supposing something goes radically wrong, you will not have an outlet. Thirdly, the point is that we are discussing something in 2034. 2034 will also probably be accompanied with women's reservation plus a delimitations of constituencies. Now, when you have these delimitations of constituencies, and with the North having an extreme advantage, it may well be that the northern states may have to be split so that all states have roughly about 20 MPs per state. We are looking at a municipalization of states in the not too distant future. These are things which are obviously being talked about among policymakers. So, and the last point is that if you have a cataclysmic event, supposing you had one nation, one poll, and you had an Indira Gandhi assassination, you would have had a Congress government all over for the next 5 years. So all kinds of people would get onto the coattails of that event and the leader at the center. Ours is a diverse country. you will not make all the provisions for diversity in such a situation.
Okay, I want to bring in Dr. Priyam at this point. Both you and Sanjay Hegde have made similar arguments, but there is what historians will quote from the first few decades after India's independence, that this worked. This worked then, and nobody thought it was a bad idea. A poll that we're running, and it's still ongoing, shows that a lot of people think it's a good idea. A majority of people think it's a good idea. If you just asked around, now again, it's the way people understand what's an election and how you frame the question and what actually they get from an election. For most people, an election is a moment of equality, a moment of egalitarianism. It's when everybody is equal. The vote makes everybody equal. I think that's a very powerful thing. बट देर इज ऑल्सो दैट सेंस कि अरे देखिए चुनाव के टाइम पे वो सब लोग नेता लोग अपनी राजनीति में लगे रहते हैं, अगर कम चुनाव हो तो शायद काम ज्यादा करेंगे, बात कम करेंगे. How do we respond to that perception or that very powerful narrative that's built around those who support this proposal?
There are 2 or 3 sets of questions that you have. One is that of the idea and the idea in history. Let me tell you that as a student of political history, you need to see history with stretched time frames, not this only time period that suits you to make one argument. That's called tailgating. I'm making this argument to suit my argument. So therefore, I want the result out of history. That's why I look at history. Now, if you simply stretch that history, you will find that the most plural politics has been played in India. The desire for democracy has been stoked by the provincial assemblies that happened after the 1935 Provincial Autonomy Act. I am neck deep into the debates that happen. Look at the most wonderful fighters of constitutional democracy in India. They were not simply the framers of the constitution. The demand for Purn Swaraj was not just a political demand at a conference held by the Congress party. This was happening in provincial assemblies, and these assemblies were demanding health, education for people, and the right for self-government. And that's the demand that then gets codified. So these demands were primarily provincial demands. They were made in India's various languages and by various political parties. Now, that's the political geography of India. That's the political history of India. What happens around 1967 is actually the beginning of the slide of Indian democracy. Why do I want to caricature or mimic a political moment which is not the high point of Indian democracy? The high point of Indian democracy is what's happening then. It's the intensity of the provincial governments because of which we were able to launch the Quit India movement and push the Britishers out. And that's the power with which our democracy lived on, was formed as a constituent assembly. And remember, the second push that happens is to the emergency. Now, our democracy should live as an anti-British and anti-emergency moment. And if this is what we propose to do, to bring it in line with our spectacular democracy, I feel this proposal currently is not such a magnificent proposal. Log baatein karte hain, kam baatein karte hain. These are all out of depth discussions. I don't know somebody may be talking about it. They have a right to talk the way they want to. But this is not the argument about our democracy. And I do not want to give it the term or affix it to the term like this is a powerful discussion. No, it's a discussion that's happening. It's a chatterbox. It's not thought through. There are implications, as Shri Sanjay Hegde ji is telling us. And last but not the least, the most popular election happens to be the panchayat elections. And I can tell you that's the level that we are not seeing or discussing. And that's the level from which new leadership is being generated. What do we want to do with that level? We want to literally disenfranchise that level from where new leaders are coming up. You have a Congress member of parliament from Rajasthan who's emerged literally from this kind of politics. So the spectacular moment of change from India's politics is actually politics from below. Does this amendment help that process or stymie that process? Ask those powerful discussants who are talking about baatein bana rahe hain aur baatein kar rahe hain. Let us see whether democracy helps baat or helps calm.
That is a very interesting and important question you have raised, Professor Ashwini Mahajan, when Dr. Priyam says that actually the BJP, which prides itself on non-elite politics and has always attacked the Congress party for political elitism, for dynasty, for the concentration of power in one family, the Prime Minister referenced it just now in the parliamentary debate, that actually elections, continuous process of elections at multiple tiers of governance, local, state, national, allows for a pushback against political elitism, allows for the birth of new politics and new politicians. And I think that's a very important question. And I'll couple it with one comment from our audience. Prasad says regular elections keep central, state, and local governments in check, wherein each of their policies and actions are put to the regular test of public opinion. So what happens to public opinion? What happens to new politics? What happens to the opportunity for a woman to become a sarpanch, for example, which is a dramatic moment in her life?
देखिए बरखा जी,
Yes.
Priyam ji has the right to raise issues, but she should respect the arguments coming. Saying that they're all ridiculous arguments is not correct. The one thing. Secondly, this the whole issue is about a principle of one nation, one election. The person who is pushing it, if we say
Yes.
Narendra Modi, he is not going to be in power at that point of time when this issue is, when these elections will be held simultaneously. So if he has, and a whole lot of debate had gone about this, and people at large are also fed up with regular elections. There is a lot of waste of money. And the one thing, as political analyst, Priyamji can say this, but as a student of economics, I must tell you that these freebies which are being given, and sometimes very, in a way, very अनुशासनहीनता के साथ जो freebies दी जाती हैं.
G.
What is the reason why I should not pay my electricity bill when I can pay for it?
So
Why
you're
should
saying
I
कि जितने चुनाव है उतना ज्यादा populist politics होगा.
होएगा और इन्होंने माना है इस बात को कि वो populist अब हम bottom of the pyramid के ऊपर बात कर रहे हैं कि उसके लिए हमें अच्छा काम करना है.
जी.
I tell you, without any sort of commitment or promises, the Modi government had delivered 4 crore houses. Without any sort of commitment, they have delivered electricity for all. Then 10 crore Ujjwala connections. So if really the bottom of the pyramid is to be served, if the poorest of the poor is to be served, then we need a policy consistency. And in the longer run, if the policy consistency is there, and when I have to go for, as Sanjay ji was saying, that Prime Minister is running after elections, hundreds of rallies and other things. As a political leader, he has to do it. But if that time can be saved of a Prime Minister, if that time can be saved of a Chief Minister, then what is the harm? And that is the only reason why you Barkha Dutt show. But you see, you have a certain kind of audience. Barkha Dutt is showing that this one nation, one election is correct, and this is the right idea. So that if I am very sure, if other kinds of polls will be conducted. Sorry, Barkha, for saying this, but if such polls are conducted, people will go for this. What politicians will say in the parliament, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But what people think, and ultimately in democracy, what is important is what people are saying.
I think that's an interesting question. It all comes down to what model of politics best serves the citizen. That's what it should be about. I know, Manisha ji, you had a brief interjection. Your mic was off at that time. Before I go to Rajat, just one sentence if you wanted to say something, I think, to Ashwini ji.
No, just half a sentence. Speaking of an idea and arguing about it does not mean disrespect. And in Indian traditions also, especially the traditions that I believe in, Mandan Mishra and Khandan are very established traditions of even the Hindu form of argumentative parliamentary democracy. Therefore, please allow me respect, and along with that, the right to disagree. Not just disagree, I'm presenting to you an array of arguments.
Okay,
And
okay.
मतैक्य से ज्यादा मत भिन्नता पर भी हमारा विश्वास रहना चाहिए. अब मतैक्य
Okay.
जिनका भी हो वो अच्छी बात है,
Ash-
सबके प्रति
जी,
हाथ जोड़
अश्विनी
के
जी,
respect है,
अश्विनी,
but do not charge me of being disrespectful of anybody.
मैंने तो केवल इतना ही कहा कि भी बाकी लोगों का भी जो एक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है वो भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're all here in agreement on that, Rajat. Now, there are completely two philosophies that are emerging from this conversation. One is that a continuous election is empowering, and it is empowering for two reasons. It is empowering because it allows accountability from those we elect, but also that it allows for access to the process. I think that's the point that Dr. Priyam is making, that there is, the more elections there are, the more participation there is, either as a voter or as a contender. And why should that opportunity be taken away in a democracy? That is one philosophy. The other philosophy is policy consistency, to not bog down parties and netas in the business of winning elections all the time, will allow them a non-populist emphasis on governance. These are two complete philosophical divergences. I mean, how do we find a middle ground here, if at all?
So, in Manisha ji's points, I did not understand a couple of things. First thing was when she said that XYZ phases were the golden years of our democracy. Can you, this requires greater sort of analysis and probing. Were the 50s and 60s the golden years of democracy? Were the 90s golden years of democracy? Or were the 2010 and 2020 the golden years of democracy? And what are the parameters for measuring what is the golden years of democracy? That is point number one. Point number two is, how does having a one nation, one election stop the process of not having grassroots leaders emerge? I did not quite understand that. How did this, how did we reach to this conclusion that if we do a one nation, one election exercise, we are going to obliterate the third tier, which is the panchayati election tier. The panchayati election, the President Kovind's report talks in detail about some of the issues there. We have also seen what happens in a de facto scenario. Look at Maharashtra. That remains a very important aspect, that state governments, because they're eyeing upon their upcoming elections in the state election or in the national election, they tend to completely subvert the process of democracy at the third tier. They do not even hold elections there. Instead of blocking a third tier election, we should constitutionally mandate it over every single government to conduct it on time. The bigger crime is not even holding those elections.
Agreed. Agreed.
So my problem is, I don't know what the core problem is. First of all, finances or no finances is no argument. We are a $3-4 trillion economy. We can easily afford 10,000 crores for election. We can very easily handle so far you were saying that Jammu and Kashmir election we could not hold with Maharashtra. Election Commission doesn't even have that sort of constraint right now to actually do it. They were looking at with whatever ease of conducting the elections, whichever way they could possibly think of. They were not under the constraint of doing it that way. And former chief election commissioners, and look at their public discussions on this topic, each one of them have said that yes, if you do it in a constructed period of time, not over 7-8 phases, but over 3-4 phases, we have the adequate amount of human power, human resources from the security forces to actually conduct these elections in a reasonable manner. Now, I don't understand what are the fundamental things that we are worried about. One more point. Sanjay Jha ji. Sanjay Jha ji said that BJP is going to pick the topic of national security, terrorism, and nationalism and all of those things. What stops the Congress party from raising those election issues? Does Congress not position itself around those core national security issues? Should foreign policy not be an important part? Look at the debates around the world that they have with their leaders around their foreign policy approach in the very first place. I don't understand. I have not heard so far, respectfully, one legitimate reason why this is against democracy, and this belittles democracy, and this disenfranchises people, and it demonetizes democracy. Give me tangible evidence for that.
Let me add a question, Sanjay Jha, from our audience. Saurav Vishesh says, there have been concurrent state and national elections where voters have voted for one party nationally and another for the state. The voters are not dumb. Delhi, the capital, is a prime example where we have seen voters are able to distinguish between national and local options. We have seen it in other states also. We have seen this. We have actually seen this, right? So what is the problem? I need to unmute Sanjay Jha. Sanjay, can you unmute yourself, please? Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now, Barkha?
Yeah.
You can even add the example of not just Delhi but Odisha. Why are we still apprehensive about it? Because you have not yet seen this operate at a national level. And when you talk of a national level, I'm just going to create for you, just think for a moment that all the states, not just one state, all the states are going to elections, and all over television channels, all you're hearing is national parties and regional parties. Who gets the space? If you look at all the data, Barkha, you'll be astonished that during the election time, the BJP gets maximum airtime, not just in Doordarshan, but in private channels. If you notice, open a newspaper during the election time. I did it in Maharashtra. I've got a picture actually. 5 pages of all national newspapers had the BJP in full color ads, and the Maha Vikas Aghadi did not even feature. Imagine if that was happening in Bihar, in Odisha, in Tamil Nadu, across the country. The media would be talking about Mr. Modi's speeches. Here is my point. The logistical challenge that we haven't even talked about, which also exposes the lie on costing. I'll give you just one example, Barkha, bear me out. I'll take 30 seconds. Imagine a state government where the government loses the confidence. It has a no confidence motion. It loses power. What happens? According to this government, which is, framed the former president's committee's recommendations, either if it's 1 year to go, it will go for 1 year under president's rule, which means further control at the hands of New Delhi. Basically, more concentration of power. What is the alternative they have suggested? Well, we can have a state election, but that term of the new assembly will be only for a period of 1 year. So I want to ask, in the first case, there is concentration of power. In the second case, there is more expenditure. Where is the cost saving? And you're once again telling the voters to choose. So there are so many inherent contradictions. I really think that Mr. Sethi and my dear friend Ashwini ji will have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, Rajat had a brief interjection in there, and then Sanjay Hegde, and then last comments. Rajat?
Well, my simple problem is that you are making assertions which are not being backed by what we are seeing on the ground. Had BJP that much amount of muscle power to spend, and they spent, fair enough. Is the Congress not doing in Telangana or Congress not doing in Karnataka? They're doing. In spite of that, they're losing elections. Is this the only sort of guarantee of winning elections? How much amount of money you spend? The answer is no. People are more smart. This approach of the opposition is that you consider people essentially as dumb. That they will see those newspaper front page ad and then they'll sway. This is, with logic, you not even contest elections. You should just sit home.
Sanjay Hegde, is there a patronizing attitude here to the wisdom of the Indian voter, who often votes differently in local elections, differently in assembly elections, and differently in national elections, and has a kind of multi-tiered political instinct? Will that instinct die if you club state and national elections?
The Indian voter may not be dumb. There may be some level of sophistication, some level of ticket splitting. But there are always wave elections. There are catastrophic elections also, like 1984. And tying everything into one 5-year schedule is like putting all your eggs in one basket. If that basket does not work, then you are in trouble as a country. So there is safety in the diversity that we've had so far. And then this other point that, have counterfactuals, have this one. It's like this. So did we have counterfactuals before the demonetization decision? You just went ahead and you thought it was a good idea, and then we know what has happened. Nobody ever even claims credit for it. So this is, so what's going to happen out here is that possibly you might win one election, after which the consequences might come back to haunt people. So it's better that India, as a country of 1 million mutinies now, as V.S. Naipaul put it, should be allowed to simmer from time to time, and every set of politicians must be constantly on their toes, saying yes, sir, to their true masters, the voters. What they want is to win it once and then sit quietly for 5 years.
So this is, I think, an important point. I'll start with last comments. Sanjay Jha, just give me a second. Ashwini ji, that if you have an election once in 5 years, what is the other method of seeking accountability from your politicians?
You see, once electorate has already elected a government,
yes,
and we must give them a chance to continue. We have seen in the past, during early days, during Indira Gandhi's days, the governments were brought down just at the whims of the top leadership. This is not going to happen right in this case. So, secondly, there is no reason why there can be an emergency can be imposed like what had happened. So I don't think the argument of democracy in danger is a correct argument, because democracy in any case is going to be there. Only thing is that we will be saving money, and at the same time political consistency also has to be maintained. So these are some good reasons why people are also supporting this idea.
Sanjay Jha? Sanjay Jha? I can't hear you,
Barkha,
Sanjay.
my short answer, Ashwini ji, Article 356 has been substituted by Operation Lotus that Mr. Amit Shah has made very popular over the last 10 years. Horse trading is now the new norm by which you have toppled governments, and we all know which states they are. My second point, therefore, and by the way, Barkha, let me tell you, in the new rule of one nation, one election, horse trading will get a further incentive because people would like to be part of a government and not be destabilized and run a government for just 1 or 2 years. Point number two, my answer to Mr. Rajat Sethi, you are the ones who are treating the people of India with disrespect. And Barkha, I'll tell you why. India has become officially the hotspot for misinformation and disinformation campaigns. They gaslight the people of India and they mislead them. And I think the people of India, like anywhere in any part of the world, are vulnerable to that psychological, social brainwashing through media, through television, and through social media. And that's a tragedy of our times.
Okay. Before Rajat comes in, Sanjay Hegde, what do you see happening next? Is this a storm in a teacup? Because how does it even pass?
It may not pass now, but you must give credit to the BJP. They take a bad idea and they run with it for long periods of time, for 100 years and more. So I don't think that they will give up on it, even if they don't get it through this time.
Yeah.
They want one nation, one election, one leader, whoever be that leader at that particular point of time.
Okay. Rajat, let me bring you in for last comments before I give Dr. Priyam the closing word.
I feel so sorry for the opposition voices. They've all already given up. It seems like they will perpetually be in the opposition, and BJP will perpetually be in the seats of power. I mean, then what's the point of having this discussion? You can go back home. Why do you even contest? The problem is you need to come out of that mold where you are presuming things. Sanjay Jha ji, who is the biggest beacon of morals in our country and upholder of all democratic rights of our country, let me also tell him, Constituent Assembly, when it came together, they said, we are going to give a government 5 years to rule the country according to the policies that they have envisaged in the election process, in their communication with the electorate. Now, you cannot try and bypass that 5 year for every year where you have to go out and respond to the people. This 5 year, in order to keep that sacrosanct, it is therefore essential that you give that window, a clean window of 5 years, and after that judge the people. You cannot go on and say that every day I'm going to judge. Secondly, I can give you more and more examples. I mean, Sanjay Hegde ji said कि जिंदा कौमें नहीं रुकती हैं, उसका इंटरप्रिटेशन उनका कुछ और है. मेरा इंटरप्रिटेशन है जिंदा कौम 5 साल का इंतजार नहीं करेगी, उनको होगा तो सड़क पे उतरेगी. अभी किसान तो सड़क पे उतरे हुए दिल्ली में. हरियाणा से पंजाब से हरियाणा में चुनाव भी नहीं है, पंजाब में भी चुनाव नहीं है, उत्तर प्रदेश में भी चुनाव नहीं है, फिर क्यों उतरे हैं सड़क पे? उतरेंगे ही. If there are genuine grievances, people will hit the streets. My problem is, how do you want to put accountability on the political head when the constitution clearly says give them 5 years, unimpeded 5 years to rule, if they have the mandate?
Okay, Dr. Priyam, okay, Sanjay Hegde, you have a sentence there, and then I'll let Rajat respond, and then Dr. Priyam, we have to close. Yes, Sanjay Hegde.
5 years of VP Singh, 5 years of Deve Gowda, 5 years of IK Gujral. Come on, that didn't happen.
Rajat?
They didn't have the mandate for it. How will it happen?
Okay, I think it comes
the mandate, right?
Dr. The mandates will be manufactured. Don't worry.
Okay, it comes down to whether we believe elections is the only... Sorry, Rajat is saying something. Rajat, can we unmute Rajat?
No. Trying to again say that Supreme Court is dead after this or what? Won't they hold the government into account, or would it just be a free ride after that? Would it be a banana republic after that?
And that was going to be my question to Dr. Priyam. Is elections the only system of accountability? And if it is even, I think the point being made is that the Constitution does give that term to be 5 years. 5 years is considered a reasonable time. If you don't like your government after that, vote them out.
So two things here in conclusion. One is that this whole thing about one nation, one election is a change the constitution argument. So if it's a change the constitution, I mean amend the constitution argument, appropriately said. If you're amending the constitution, why don't you try a one nation, one election with a 3-year term, right? Giving the people greater opportunity to vent their voice if they want to. A hypothetical possibility. Will you accept that? And whether you can pass that or not, it's an idea. Now, the second point is that in actual practice, even according to the recommendations of the committee, suppose the state governments fall and you have president's rule for a small tenure. What we will see empirically is minor insertions of state level arenas of emergency. What does that do? That means really that Daroga rule, DM rule will increase. It will mean, therefore, that in effect, there will be greater dissent. Remember, people of India like their politicians. For them, elections are not an immoral thing. Politics is not immoral for the people of India. They like to go to their politicians and not to the Daroga, who's been the villain of India's politics since British times and up until now. If there is a much hated figure, it's the Daroga, really. Now, do we want minor insertions of emergency, million small models of emergency, and people fighting the courts to, bring down the local models of emergency? The people of India are not invested with that kind of legalese and legal power, unfortunately. One of those things that still needs to strike popular roots is the judiciary of India. I wish India's democracy more power and more great to its people, including a bottom-up opening of legal arenas where we can have these things discussed at the panchayat level. Can a panchayat strike down an immoral imposition of local emergency? If that happens, it's great to have these constitutional amendments.
I think all I can say... Oh, sorry, Ashwini ji, you have your hand up. Ashwini ji?
Yeah, actually, this issue will be discussed in the parliament. Yes. And the point which Manisha ji is raising is a very valid point. And we had been having, by-elections. And these by-elections, we choose people, even the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha both. We can have by-elections for that particular 2 years term, 3 years term when the government has fallen. So that this issue can be discussed. But throwing away the idea that this one nation, one election is not is not good. So we can find ways and means where we can achieve the objective of saving money and policy consistency, and at the same time getting solutions out of it.
Well, I think this conversation should give you a sense of the Parliament debate. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how that unfolds, or does the bill get straight away referred to a committee? We don't actually know how this is going to play out in Parliament. Let's watch that space. Thank you very much to the two Sanjays, Jha and Hegde, to Rajat Sethi, to Professor Ashwini Mahajan, to Dr. Manisha Priyam. Always a pleasure talking to all of you and learning from all of you. Thank you very much. And to our audience, see you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.